Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Who do you think, taking out Northern Dancer, who do you think has been the most influential stallion of the last 40 years?
Last 40 years. So let's see. That goes back to
make it the 50s.
From the 50s?
Make it 50. That's really when you started to follow. So
So the last, well, it's got to be Mr. Prospector in this country, Danzig internationally. Mm-hmm. Those two horses at Claiborne really are, modern breed shapers. Of course, Danzig is the son of Northern Dancer, but Mr. Prospector has, his influence is still so powerful right now. Northern Dancer, basically, his influence only kind of really exists in this country right now through Stormcat. Danzig, his influence really kind of diffused in this country, and he's more an international phenomenon, Europe and Australasia. He's got, of course, Warfront here, but that was a turf thing. Now, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's definitely Mr. Prospector.
What's interesting about the stallions you just brought up is that, and this is something that I think that gets lost for the general population when they're talking about breeding and stallions and things. And that you just brought up three, hugely important stallions. Mr. Prospector, who was a sprinter.
Yeah.
Who no one, I remember when in the 80s hearing a lot of questions. Is Mr. Prospector? He's got a lot of brilliance and he's got a lot of fast horses. But is he ever going to get mile and a quarter horses?
Right.
And there was a lot of people that didn't think he was.
Exactly.
And then you look at Danzig.
And he was a sprinter too.
Right. And right. You look at Danzig, who had a 3-race career.
Mm-hmm.
My guy, Joe Brocklebank, rode him first time out.
Right.
And then you go to
Stormcat.
You talked about Stormcat, but Warfront.
Yeah.
And that Warfront has been a really strong influence on grass, and he never raced the single race on grass.
Yeah, it was basically a dirt sprinter.
He was when he ran in the Breeders' Cup at Churchill, he was in jerking shift in my barn at Churchill.
Wow.
Fernando Abreu was with him, and I remember looking at him thinking, man, you don't look like much.
Yeah.
Great call, Chuck.
Yeah.
He's standing for $250,000. 5 years later, but and even Stormcat. I mean, Stormcat was a horse who was really good as a 2-year-old.
Exactly.
And a Pennsylvania bred.
Right.
Trained by Jonathan Shepard, of course. Trained by a guy who's really known more for his steeplechase career. But and then Stormcat got hurt, and he missed I think he missed a year, and then came back and ran once or twice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And you look at the current stallion, top stallion, Into Mischief, who kind of had a brief career too. You look at Tappet, who didn't really do much. And, people seem to think that, I guess where I was going with this is...
Well, Into Mischief and Tappet both, I think, only had 6 starts.
Yep.
Each.
I think what I was really trying to... This roundabout way of getting there is that the race record isn't... just give me your thoughts using those horses obviously as the catalyst. What people don't understand about race records and potential stallions.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, we just mentioned those horses there. None of those horses went to stud for a big stud fee. Mr. Prospector went to stud in Florida. Danzig was probably the most expensive out of them. That's because Woody told Seth, this was the greatest horse he ever trained. Stormcat, you had, Overbrook was, really soliciting mares for him when he went to stud. Into Mischief, same thing at Spendthrift, there was a point where you could get them for $7,500. Tappet started at 15. Same with Warfront at 12.5. All these horses we just mentioned, were fairly inexpensive in the big picture, weren't they? All of them had all of them had some kind of speed to them, I think, and all of them had this, early 3-year-old form too. I think when you look at a stallion, you've got to look at 2 and early 3-year-old form. And it's actually one of the reasons why, if you look carefully at the Florida Derby, it's actually getting more better stallions than the race that everybody thinks is the big stallion making race, which is the Met Mile. And part of that is because, these are 2-year-olds getting ready for the classics early in their 3-year-old years. So I think you have to have a little brilliance to you and some early development. Into Mischief was a grade 1 winner at 2. And the others, they had speed. So Stormcat was the grade 1 winner at 2. So I think if you're really kind of wildcatting for a stallion, it's always good to look at some of these horses that are at 20 or less or 15 and less, because they may end up being your big horse.
Yeah, it's funny because people kind of look down their nose at those horses, and
they want horses like Skip Away, who made a ton of starts.
Yeah,
but did nothing as a stallion.
No, it's so true. Some of the best horses just never, they could never replicate themselves, but they couldn't. I mean, Skip Away wasn't all that well bred. I think.
Right.
I know it's a complicated. Richard Galpin told me one time. I asked him about a stallion when I first started training, and he said, he goes, "You want a sure-proof way to be right 90% of the time?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Just hate every stallion, every new stallion." He goes, "You'll be right 9 out of 10." He goes, "Because most of them don't. A few years from now, no one heard of them already."
Yeah,
and I said,
that's true.
It is true. It's amazing, I think, when you see the report of mares bred to stallions, how some of these stallions will be, so hot as young. And it's never been like this before, right? I mean, it's never been where you have this massive demand for first year and second year stallions.
Yeah, this is a whole new paradigm from, recent times, because the breeding game is so commercial. Everyone's breeding to sell. And so it boils down to this. They want to bring a yearling to market where that sire has not been a failure. So if you bring a first crop yearling to market, you're safe. If you bring a second crop yearling to market, think about this. That first crop of that stallion is now 2, and the yearling sale, say in September, he might have flopped by then, right? But maybe not. But think about this. If you bring a third crop yearling to market, that means if you bred in a horse's 3rd year at stud, if the 2-year-olds and the 3-year-olds have bombed by the time you bring your yearling to the market, you're dead. And since it's a selling game, that's why people don't want to take chances. It's an investment hedge. So they want to go to that first year to be safe.
It was interesting.